As Paul continues to encourage his protege Timothy in the book of 1 Timothy, he begins to teach him about what it should look like to be a leader in the church. This saying is trustworthy. If anyone aspires to the office of overseer, he desires a noble task. Therefore, an overseer must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, sober-minded, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not a drunkard, not violent but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own household well, with all dignity, keeping his children submissive. For if someone does not know how to handle his own household, how will he care for God's church? He must not be a recent convert, or he may become puffed up with conceit and fall into the condemnation of the devil. Moreover, he must be well thought of by outsiders, so that he may not fall into disgrace, into a snare of the devil. So Paul has a lot of qualifications for what an overseer or elder or pastor should look like. And all of them are important on their own, but they can all be summed up with one important phrase. God cares how church leaders act. It's not just about what they look like on Sundays. It's about how they live their lives every day. How are they as a father? How are they as a husband? How are they when they do business? How are they in all of these things? A church leader is expected to be a church leader in their life, not just in the church building. And we can also see this in Paul's qualifications for deacons. Deacons likewise must be dignified, not double-tongued, not addicted to much wine, not greedy for dishonest gain. They must hold the mystery of the faith with a clear conscience, and let them also be tested first. Then let them serve as deacons if they prove themselves blameless. Their wives likewise must be dignified, not slanderers, but sober-minded, faithful in all things. Let deacons each be the husband of one wife, managing their children and their own households well. For those who serve well as deacons gain a good standing for themselves, and also great confidence in the faith that is in Christ Jesus. So what Paul is saying here, first of all, he says, let wives likewise be dignified, not slanderers, but sober-minded. So there's an expectation for a deacon's wife as well, or for a church leader's wife. So that saying that being a pastor's wife is a full-time job is 100% true. There's an expectation for how pastors' wives, as well as pastors, though they don't use the word pastors here, there's an expectation for how they live their lives. They are expected to live a certain way. And Paul tells us why in the next phrase. I hope to come to you soon, but I am writing these things to you so that, if I delay, you may know how one ought to behave in the household of God, which is the church of the living God, a pillar and buttress of the truth. So Paul is saying that the church is the household of God. We are God's family. Just like in your family, there's a certain expectation of how we should act and treat each other in the church. We are all brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, uncles, aunts, and everything in between in the church, and we should be treating each other as such. And then Paul starts to talk about doctrine about Jesus. Great indeed, we confess, is the mystery of godliness. He was manifested in the flesh, vindicated by the Spirit, seen by angels, proclaimed among the nations, believed on in the world, taken up in glory. Now, this passage seems a little bit out of place considering the context of what we've been talking about in this passage. But it's important to note that this seems to be talking about Jesus' authority. The mystery of godliness, he was manifested in the flesh, and he was taken up in glory, proclaimed among the nations, believed on in the world, vindicated by the Spirit in his resurrection. What Paul is saying is that Jesus is who he said he was. He has authority, and our church is a manifestation of that because we are his body and we should be acting like it.